Good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you're tuning in at. I'd like to welcome everyone today to the Invasive Mussel Collaborative webinar series. Our presenter today is Thomas Woolf with the Aquatic Invasive Species Bureau, who's the chief for the Montana Fish, Wildlife, and Parks. And today, Tom's going to be sharing some findings, lessons learned, and results from Montana's mussel response. And this is following 5 years from the first detection. So thanks so much for joining us today, Tom. Before I hand it over, I'm just going to provide a little bit of background for those who might not be familiar with the Invasive Mussel Collaborative. My name is Sam Tank, and I'm joined by my colleague today, Patrick Caniff, with the Great Lakes Commission. And on behalf of the Invasive Mussel Collaborative, I want to thank you for participating in today's webinar. So like I said, I just want to give a little bit of background for those of you who might not be familiar with the collaborative. We've convened the Invasive Mussel Collaborative in 2015 to identify opportunities to scientifically advance technology and management and control of invasive Dreissenid mussels in order to produce some measurable ecological and economic benefits. The Invasive Mussel Collaborative came together a couple years after establishment and published a strategy for the advancement of management of zebra and quagga mussels, and this was in 2018. And this was an effort to reduce invasive mussels and their negative impacts across North America. The strategy identified 5 goals and a series of subsequent objectives, and this can be found on our website. To make progress on these goals, the collaborative has established 4 work groups. We have a research work group, the Dreissenid toxicity testing work group, coastal site priority work group, and most recently established the planning and implementation work group. So the first work group that I mentioned, the research work group, it was charged with coordinating existing research and developing a targeted research plan and projects that address Great Lakes management priorities. The group recently released a coordination tool that I'm showing on the screen to help protect the Great Lakes Basin from the impacts of invasive mussels. And obviously this isn't just a Great Lakes focused map, it does span across North America, and we encourage participation nationwide, continent-wide really. The new Dreissenid project coordination mapper allows researchers and managers to share their work and collaborate with others for the advancement and protection of waterways from invasive mussels. The map currently features about 120 past and current projects from across North America, and new projects are being accepted on an ongoing basis. This is also available on our website, which I will happily share the link with all registrants following the webinar. The Dreissenid toxicity testing work group is charged with reviewing how toxicity testing of potential control methods on mussels has been conducted across various labs, discusses strengths and weaknesses of different approaches and methods, and identify and make recommendations where mussels could be or methods could be further refined and standardized, and then develop associated guidance for use by researchers that can be implemented to help create these standards. So the studies that were evaluated were recently compiled into a table, and this is available on the website as well. And this provides a searchable collection of literature reviewed for Dreissenid laboratory toxicity testing and open water control test methods as well. The never before seen, coming soon, the Coastal Site Priorities Work Group is really close to releasing a new and exciting tool. This work group is charged with reviewing information on where Dreissenids are impacting Great Lakes resources, evaluating sites based on this information and other criteria, and then developing and implementing a system for prioritizing sites for potential management activities. This work group is close to announcing the release of this interactive dashboard that you can see on the screen. And that displays as a map as nearshore data from the Coastal Site Priorities Index that was developed by the work group. This dashboard and associated indices are intended to inform future applied Dreissenid research and management activities by aiding with site prioritization. So be on the lookout for the release of this tool within the coming weeks. The newest work group is the Planning and Implementation Work Group, which was recently developing its charge. And what this group hopes to accomplish is to develop a research and management roadmap for site and regional scale mussel control tools, identify stakeholders and funding priorities, and remaining knowledge gaps to guide future Dreissenid control activities. What this work group is doing is taking all of the expertise from the last 5 years or so, all of the products of the previous work groups and some of the other initiatives of the collaborative, and using that to help make recommendations on future planning and implementation control projects. So if you're interested in learning more about any of the work group accomplishments that I just covered, I really encourage everyone to register for an upcoming webinar that's hosted by the North American Invasive Species Management Association. And that's going to be on November 16th. And you can hear our work group chairs cover those exciting tools in more detail. Today's webinar is part of an invasive mussel communication network facilitated by the Invasive Mussel Collaborative. The purpose of these webinars is to facilitate learning and information sharing on topics of common interest within the invasive mussel community. This webinar is being recorded and will be archived along with other past webinars on our website. And we will share out a link to that for our listserv, but also through Eventbrite for all of those who are watching live. So before I turn it over to Tom, I just want to go through a couple of housekeeping things just to minimize any technological issues during the webinar. The audio is going to be automatically muted, or I'm sorry, the audio is automatically streamed through your speakers unless you choose to call in. We are going to automatically mute all attendees, and you're going to you'll remain muted with your webinar cameras disabled throughout the webinar. However, you will have the opportunity to unmute yourselves following the Q&A, where you can either raise your hand and unmute yourself and ask questions directly to Tom, or we do also encourage and accept written questions from attendees during the webinar. So you can see the green circle on your screen. This is the chat feature. Feel free to send chats directly to Patrick or myself, or also go ahead and send it to the entire group and we'll make sure that we read them out. We do our best to take all questions and comments during the webinar, but if you do need to leave before the end, be sure to revisit the recording to hear the answer to your question. And if you're hearing any if you're having any technical difficulties, go ahead and send a direct message to Patrick Caniff. Okay, so now I'm really pleased to introduce our speaker today, Thomas Woolf. Thomas has worked on aquatic invasive species issues for over 20 years now, very impressive. Previously, he worked with the Idaho State Department of Agriculture, developing and implementing Idaho's AIS program. And in 2017, he moved to Montana and started as the AIS Bureau Chief for Montana Fish, Wildlife, and Parks. And this is where he currently coordinates and manages the state's aquatic invasive species program. So I'll stop sharing and go ahead, Tom, you can take it away.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you all today. I'll give you an update on what's going on in Montana. Am I looking okay on your end?
Looks perfect.
Great. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. So I'm going to give you a brief update today on the mussel detection in Montana, what happened here, and then where we're at today, the status of Montana's program. So in 2016, late 2016, we identified invasive mussel veliger in Tiber Reservoir and Canyon Ferry Reservoir in Montana. The governor declared a natural resource emergency. So this was the first detection of invasive mussels in the state at the time. An incident command team was put in place to coordinate the implementation of a rapid response. And Montana's legislature was in session at the time as well. So the legislature approved new statute was approved, funding was approved, and additional staff were dedicated to the invasive species issue, including creating my position at Montana Fish, Wildlife, and Parks. So I know we have people from all over on the call today. So this is a map of where the mussel detections occurred in Montana. The little orange square was at Canyon Ferry Reservoir. That detection was just a single veliger detected in a sample, and that was listed as a suspect water body following that detection. The yellow circle is Tiber Reservoir. It's a really remote reservoir in north central Montana. That particular detection was veligers detected at several different sampling events, multiple individuals at the time. In response, mandatory inspection and decontamination at mussel impacted waters was implemented. So at Tiber and Canyon Ferry, all watercraft exiting those water bodies had mandatory inspection and, if needed, decontamination to prevent mussels from spreading outward into other basins and other areas in the state. Also, mandatory inspection before launch requirements were put in place for all boats that are entering the state to launch, crossing west over the Continental Divide, or entering into the Flathead Basin in northwestern Montana. Inspection before launch was required. 27 inspection stations were stood up, and over 250 seasonal employees were put in on the ground at the time to address this threat. The funding for the program came from a fee on hydroelectric power generation, a fee on fishing licenses attached to fishing licenses, an out-of-state boater fees. That was the core state funding for the program at the time. This was also supplemented by federal grants through the Bureau of Reclamation, Army Corps of Engineers, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and U.S. Forest Service, giving us about a $5 million budget at the time. And that's pretty much where we remain today. We also saw expanded enforcement, expanded early detection, expanded outreach and education, and also expanded partner involvement, helping to get this program out on the ground around the state. So 5 years following that detection, what's going on in Montana? After 5 years of no detection of mussels in Tiber, we delisted it as a mussel positive water body. So this was following intensive survey and sampling. We have had divers in the water every year. We've taken a lot of plankton tow samples for microscopy analysis, utilizing also environmental DNA, mussel sniffing canines for when the water is drawn down, searching for adult mussels, doing shoreline surveys. It appears that population did not take and is not present up there. We still sample the heck out of Tiber. This year was the first season. It was delisted as positive, so we no longer had that mandatory exit inspection on Tiber. We sampled the heck out of it and no evidence of mussels. So we're hopeful that we dodged a bullet with the Tiber mussel issue. One thing we've put into effect following that Tiber detection is a rapid response plan or rapid response guidelines. When mussels were detected in Tiber, we had a week response plan. So following that detection, we really drew up some guidelines on the proper way to respond to detections like this. That's available at cleandraindrymt.com if you're interested. We don't have water body specific response plans, but what these guidelines do is lay out a framework that we can utilize across the board to kind of guide us on a response to a future detection. We also have rapid response exercises that we conduct every other year, give or take, working with Pacific States Marine Fisheries Commission and U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, bringing partners together around a specific high-risk water body and going through the motions on what we would do if mussels were detected in water bodies of Montana. Watercraft inspection is ongoing in the state. We saw about 112,000 inspections or 112,000 boats that we inspected this year statewide. During COVID, it was interesting. We saw that peak there with a high number of inspections. And at that time, it was really a lot of Montana residents just wanting to get out of the house and enjoying waters in Montana. A lot of non-motorized boats, rafts, enjoying rivers and lakes around the state. And then I think we've gotten to kind of a moderated place and where our inspections are going to probably remain moving forward. Inspections or stations are set up on high-risk corridors to address boats that are coming from high-risk areas, boats that can be carrying zebra and quagga mussels, Eurasian water milfoil, and also to help accommodate our inspection before launch requirements for boats entering the state and crossing west over the Continental Divide. This is last year's data, just illustrating where boats are coming from, coming to and through Montana. Definitely an underrepresentation of Canada in that figure, just because the border was closed at the time. And this is one of our inspection stations in eastern Montana, Webo, Montana, really showing how far people will travel to and through Montana with a boat. That's data from just last season. And again, our focus is zebra and quagga mussel prevention, but we're looking for other aquatic invasive species on those vessels as they come into the state. We also display our data on an AIS dashboard at cleandraindryimt.com. It's updated weekly. It's just a tool for, we have a lot of interested partners around the state that are curious what's going on at each inspection station, how are our inspection numbers coming, how are our mussel foul vessel intercepts coming. It's a good place to provide information for people that are interested in tracking what we're doing out there. And partnerships is a big thing that's really made this program successful. Through Fish, Wildlife, and Parks, we contract with partners to manage inspection stations where we have partners available that are willing and able to do so. So we work really closely with tribes, Confederated Salish and Kootenai tribes, the Blackfeet Nation, both operate inspection stations funded by the state. And then also conservation districts are a really powerful partner. Each county has a conservation district. And so we have a lot of our inspection stations are in very remote locations. These conservation districts take on the role of day-to-day management, supervision, hiring, that type of thing. The state comes in and we provide the training, oversight, quality assurance, quality control. It's just worked out really great to get these stations set up on the ground, get that local involvement and local buy-in in the aquatic invasive species issue. And then also working with other partners like Whitefish Lake. They run their own inspection station that's not funded by the state, but we work with them on protocols, on materials, on QA, QC, that type of thing, as well as places like Glacier National Park, who also conducts inspections. More than half of our watercraft inspections are conducted by partners now, and we're trying to expand that further. The remainder is the other inspections are conducted by Fish, Wildlife, and Park staff. Those are stations that in locations where we haven't found a partner that's willing and able to take on management of those stations. But really, I can't emphasize enough the power of working with local communities and getting that local buy-in to get this program on the ground around the state. Just a list of our partners, working closely with National Park Service as well, and then neighboring states and provinces. So throughout the West, there's a lot of inspections going on, a lot of inspection stations. We really work closely and communicate closely with other states to try to have unified protocols, communicate when we see issues out there in the field. When we see a boat that's fouled with mussels coming through the region, we're sure we're all on the same page and respond appropriately when we see these things coming through. This is a graphic of where inspection stations are at any given time in the summer in the West, just really illustrating a lot of effort going on to inspect watercraft, primarily because of concerns of zebra and quagga mussels moving into the region. Those stars indicate new detections just this season. So Colorado had a detection in the Grand Junction area of zebra mussels. They just found one zebra mussel in Highline Reservoir. And then the other star is Pactola Reservoir in South Dakota in the Black Hills. This one is in particular concern for Montana, just because it is 70 miles from the state. It's a 200-mile jump west of mussels coming from the Missouri system into the Black Hills. The closer these mussels get to our region, the more concerned we are. The more likely they'll be able to survive in transport and introduction. So working really closely with the state of South Dakota, the state of Wyoming, also Bureau of Reclamation and Forest Service and Fish and Wildlife Service, trying to see if we can get a good containment program at Pactola Reservoir, because at this point, zebra mussels have not been found anywhere else in the Black Hills besides that one reservoir outside of Rapid City. So this is a number of mussel interceptions, mussel foul boat interceptions per year. I understand that a lot of you live in places with zebra and quagga mussels, and these numbers would be incredibly small if you live in a place like that. In Montana, we have a no tolerance for this, for mussels on watercraft, even evidence of mussels. We really want boats to be clean and make sure, even live or dead, ensure all boats are not transporting mussels or mussel material. So numbers have continued to rise, and again, 2021 was a big year. In this last season, we have a little bit less, with I think we're at 53 mussel foul vessels this season. And this is where they're coming from. We see boats coming from the Southwest, and also the Great Lakes area seems to be where most of these are coming from. And primarily these boats, more than half of these boats are coming as recent purchases. So we have a lot of people in Montana, Washington, Idaho, British Columbia, that go online, they see a boat they want. There's the selection of boats in the Great Lakes is much better than a lot of other places. The cost is more reasonable. So it's been more than several times we've had people purchase boats from something they saw online in the Great Lakes. Sometimes sight unseen. Sometimes they get a mechanic there to look at it. Sight unseen, they hire somebody to haul it. It's in the water in the Great Lakes, and we see it in Montana 2 days later with live zebra mussels all over it. So that's a pathway that we're really concerned about, working closely with the Great Lakes panel to see if we can do something to make sure that when these used boats are sold and boats are transported commercially, that they're clean, just because that is the boat more than likely that's going to infest mussels into Montana. It's a vector we're concerned about. One of the things that has been done to help address this is this Call Before You Haul program. This was spearheaded by Pacific States Marine Fisheries Commission, working closely with other Western states, basically working through state departments of transportation to inform commercial haulers of watercraft that they need to contact their destination if they're bringing a watercraft in because of concerns of aquatic invasive species. And this is something that's been in place for a little over a year now. I think it's continues to expand. It's just a good base program to get information out there for commercial haulers that are moving these boats. One of the issues with this program, though, is that a lot of the boats that we see aren't on a big commercially, not a big rig that's hauling them. It's just a guy with a truck who has gotten this load, which is a used boat, and moves it west. And so trying to get to that community of people, the guy with the truck community that's moving boats, is the next step, is how do we reach them, and how do we make sure that they're hauling clean boats and they're not going around us. Our inspection stations aren't everywhere. They aren't open 24 hours a day at most locations. Trying to create an environment where they seek us out because they know it's the law, and we take care of it for them. We try not to push the penalty side too hard, because we want to make sure people come to us, because our main objective is to make sure these boats are clean. Okay, another portion of the program is early detection side. Following mussel detections, we now have, in 2016, we now have 6 staff dedicated to annual surveys statewide. Montana is a big state, but when you look at our maps, we don't have as much water as a lot of your states do. So we're able to cover our waters pretty well, especially our high-risk water bodies like Flathead Lake and Fort Peck are big water bodies that are destinations for a lot of people that are coming in from out of state. Survey is all taxa. We do a lot of veliger plankton tows for microscopy analysis for veliger early detection. And recently, we've also started using environmental DNA for Dreissenid early detection. It's something that's been a long time coming. We had a lot of challenges early on, at least several years ago, with defining what a eDNA detection means. I think we've got it partners and our federal partners and our other partners around the state to a place where we can clearly communicate an environmental DNA detection of a Dreissenid mussel, a single detection, means we look harder, and it doesn't mean we run around with our hair on fire and have another rapid response emergency type thing. It's a smoke alarm, a mussel smoke alarm that, through a preponderance of evidence, through multiple environmental DNA hits, or the identification of veligers or an adult, that's it's just another tool in the toolbox that we're using more broadly now. Fish, Wildlife, and Parks has a laboratory where we do that early detection analysis. We run about 3,000 samples a year, 3,500 samples a year through the lab. We also get process samples from other Missouri River states that they submit to us. It's an early detection lab, so it's just a presence absence for the purpose of finding some of these populations early on. And then also we have a lot of partners that also assist with sampling, really promoting that citizen science, getting people out there looking for invasive species, and then also getting them to sample and submit those samples to us for analysis to get more eyes out there looking for early detection. Just a quick map from last season of where samples were collected. Again, particular focus on Flathead Lake in the east, or in the west, and Fort Peck in the eastern part of the state. And then partner sampling. We work really closely with the Flathead Biological Station, tribes, Army Corps of Engineers, and other NGOs around the state that collect and submit samples to us, which is great. Couple slides real quick just to highlight, we do have invasive species in Montana, although compared to other places, distribution is pretty limited. I mean, as far as an opportunity for prevention, this is a great place to do it because we don't have a lot of the things that are so common in other places. New Zealand mud snails are fairly widely distributed, but that's about it. And so we also have programs focused to don't let it loose, angler cleaning gear stations, that type of stuff, promoting that clean, drain, dry message statewide. Aquatic and invasive plants are a little bit more widely distributed, but again, they're not everywhere. So it just provides a great opportunity for prevention to prevent existing species that are in the state, preventing them from expanding to new locations. Programs also involved with treatment to some degree. So we do some herbicide and diver removal for milfoil populations. We do treatment assessments for herbicide efficacy. Fragrant water lily isn't native to Montana, so we do some removal projects in conjunction with Forest Service on that species. The state is currently working with USDA Agriculture Research Service to develop and release a biocontrol agent for flowering rush. So ARS has a research station in Sidney, Montana, where they're developing this agent, and we're hopeful to get a release on a biocontrol agent for flowering rush here in the next couple of years, which is great. We have had one population of corbicula clams in the state that we believe we have eradicated through a drawdown, which is also a great project. We have the bullfrog and snapping turtle removal projects in conjunction with the Confederated Salish Kootenai tribes in the Flathead area. Those are species that aren't native to Western Montana. And so trying to go after those species where they occur. And then New Zealand mud snail eradication from hatcheries. We've had several detections in hatcheries where we've been able to successfully eradicate those from the hatchery systems and get them back online so we can start producing fish again at those facilities. Then another part of the program is our outreach and education. And this is something that really trying to get people aware of that clean, drain, dry message, promoting behavior change so that people do that every time when they're removing a boat from the water body. And then also that don't let it loose message associated with aquariums to address that pathway. We have a lot of partners around the state that we work with. It's interesting in Montana that there's a lot of people that want to be involved. So with the AIS issues, so getting them the tools and getting them out there to deliver the information in our local communities has been incredibly valuable. Working with our federal partners, irrigation districts, Trout Unlimited, Walleyes Unlimited, conservation districts, other NGOs, utilizing AmeriCorps volunteers in a lot of locations to help get this information out there, which has been really, really effective. Through the state, we provide base customizable materials to local partners with that clean, drain, dry message with a similar design, and then partners can take that, customize it, and deliver it in their local communities to get that message out there. That's been incredibly effective. Also working closely with industry. So there's an industry engagement project that's been going on where we have these AmeriCorps volunteers or Big Sky Watershed Corps volunteers going to businesses, providing them information, clean, drain, dry information that they provide to their clients at marinas, at boat shops, at outdoor stores, just a way to amplify that message farther out into the community. Just been extremely successful. And then social media. This just came out last week and I thought it was hilarious. So this finding things in kids candy meme that's been going around. We saw, Oklahoma put out something finding a silver carp in their Milky Way candy bar. So we put a red swamp crayfish in a Snickers bar, just things to get people's attention and get people thinking about invasive species. Montana Fish, Wildlife and Parks has a Fisheries Friday social media campaign that is for fisheries education and engagement. It's goofy. It has some weird things to get people's attention, but it gets the message out there. I encourage you to check it out. If you haven't seen it, Google Fisheries Friday, Montana, and it should come up. Creative ways to help get that information out there is, it's hard to get people's attention nowadays, as you know. So looking forward, maintaining funding. We have a Montana's legislative session is every other year. So we have a session coming up this next year. It's going to be interesting to see if, with Tiber being delisted as a mussel positive water, if we can maintain that funding moving forward. And then so that we can allow maintaining our existing other efforts through prevention and early detection and outreach. We are looking at other rapid response exercises coming up in this next season to keep all the partners aware of what we need to do if invasive species are detected. Continue to expand partner involvement, which has been critical for the success of the program here in Montana. Targeted outreach. So during COVID and following COVID, we've seen a lot of people moving to Montana, as a lot of people nationally have seen new people moving in. So making sure that those folks are aware, if they bring a boat in from out of state, it needs to be clean, but also that just the practices of boating and recreating on the water. Part of that would be making sure your boat's clean every time. And then trying to identify better ways to address that transport of invasive species on watercraft that have been recently purchased. That is one of the biggest pathways that we have now that hasn't really been addressed effectively. And finding a boat that's coming from the Great Lakes in Montana, I think there's an opportunity there to address that before it gets here, and working with our partners in regional, in other states, to see if we can find some strategies to tighten that up and make sure those boats are clean. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Tom. That was wonderful. And I just want to say bravo on the social media, because those have been going around my office for sure, and I've been loving it. Okay, so at this time, we are going to open it up for questions and discussion. So if you'd like to raise your hand, you will very shortly be able to. Okay. So feel free to type questions in the chat box, raise your hand, and you can unmute yourself and ask questions of Tom. We did have a couple that came in, and I can just kick it off. So you had mentioned New Zealand mud snails in hatcheries and doing some successful decontamination. Are there any similar protocols for mussel detections in hatcheries?
Our protocols for hatcheries would be similar. So hatcheries situations are usually pretty easy. We have them set up for dewatering and then hot water decontamination. And that dewatering process, if the hatchery is set up so that you can do that, you can effectively eradicate just about any aquatic organism. And so some of our hatcheries are fairly old. We've got a lot of infrastructure improvements that are going on right now to increase biosecurity, and part of that is to enable drying of entire facilities to help prevent or to address eradication of invasive species if they're detected.
Another question that we had come in was hoping that you could talk a little bit more about building relationships with industry and how that's gone, because I believe that that's been a difficult I guess relationship to build and maintain on a lot of different levels with OIT.
Yes, so this was a project that was spearheaded by our Upper Columbia Conservation Commission. They were able to get it's called a Big Sky Watershed Corps volunteer, but it's similar to AmeriCorps. It's just kind of Montana based, where it's somebody who's recently graduated, interested in the issue, wants experience. It's an internship. We've been able to get some outstanding folks to help spearhead the implementation of that program. And basically it's going to these marina facilities, boat shops, outdoor facilities, outdoor shops that sell to the public, recreation gear, that type of thing. We have outreach materials for them. We have a pledge for them, so that it's basically engaging them directly, asking them if they know about invasive species, asking them if they're willing to participate in helping to prevent invasive species through the distribution of some of these materials, which are like stickers and brochures, that outreach material that we typically use to make people more aware of the invasive species issue and what they can do to help address it. And it's been largely well received, and I think it's been largely well received because we are just working with these local businesses. It is a face-to-face interaction where we're getting their time and talking to them about this issue with a competent, well-trained individual to help share that information. And then, so this program has been going on for 3 years now, and we're beginning to revisit businesses that have been engaged with this program before, and most of them continue to do it. We have signs that we provide that they put up in their window, saying "Protect our waters, clean, drain, dry," and then they share those materials with their customers as they come in. It's just that ownership of the resource, which those businesses are profiting directly off of that resource, and just making that connection. There's no cost to them, and then part of that social marketing, they sign that a pledge, basically saying we pledge to protect our waters and share this information. And it's worked really well. If you need more information, we can get you the outline of that and how we've approached it, but I think it's been successful.
Yeah, that sounds really great. I'm happy to hear about that for sure. We have another question. Other than a strong need for response plans, what would you say are some of the biggest lessons learned?
So when mussels were detected in the state, and when the program really blew up, and there was a lot that had to be done in a very short period of time to stand up stations, hiring people, supervising, figuring out what we had. One of the crazy things when mussels were first detected is the question of where else are they? I mean, if we found them here and here, then why aren't they everywhere? So in part of that explosion of the program where things were growing really quickly, it was clear that a lot of partners out there, a lot of groups locally hadn't been engaged and involved in the issue. That there was a lot of there was a poor relationship between Fish, Wildlife, and Parks and partners that wanted to do more on the issue and hadn't been enabled or empowered to do so. And so that was one of the biggest challenges, which was resolved for the most part fairly quickly by direct engagement. You sit down with them, you talk with them, figure out what their concerns are, and then put them to work. And with these contracted inspection stations, like with the tribes in particular, they weren't very happy with the way things were being done. We were able to turn things around, provide them the opportunity to manage inspection stations that were on their tribal lands. And they're doing the best job we have out there. I mean, they're really kicking butt. And that, I think that relationships part was getting over that hump, I think was one of the other big challenges. And as far as lessons learned, if you have somebody that's interested out there in the issue, engage them and involve them. That's been really successful.
Quite a few more questions coming in. If anyone wants to unmute themselves and ask a question, feel free, but I'll just keep continuing. We have one question. Great to see how your AIS program has grown over the years. Kudos. Concerning expanding outreach, what do you have planned? Who are your target audiences?
Yes, target audience in particular is a lot of these people that are coming in from out of state, people that are coming to visit, but also people that are moving here. We're working through our Department of Commerce that spearheads our outreach to bring people to Montana, and then targeting that if we're advertising, Montana's waters to come fish in, to come boat in, part of that advertisement is with that clean, drain, dry message to help get that info there. And I think broad scale, that's the most effective. One of the better things we can do is just make sure those people have that information when they get here. There's been geo-targeting, geofencing type proposals too for next season to help target places like Fort Peck and Flathead Lake are some of our major destinations that we have for people bringing boats, so that when they come into those areas, they get a ping on their social media feed, basically getting them information on what our requirements are for boat inspection. We also have an out-of-state boat fee, make sure you pay that type of thing. And on top of that, just the partnership stuff, enabling partners to help get that message out there too is important, and continuing to expand that.
Thanks, Tom. Another question. It seems like there are a few instances where certain agencies are restricting the activity of ballast bearing watercrafts in extremely sensitive areas. In the early days of the detection, was there any discussion about protocols or legislation regarding ballast boats, and how were they treated coming out of suspect reservoirs?
Great question. Yes, there was discussion about banning them outright, but that didn't go very far. But where we're at right now is Montana does have a law in the books that requires ballast vessels to be decontaminated if they're coming in from out of state to launch in Montana. So an inspection is required if you're coming in regardless to launch in the state. And on top of that, if it's a ballast boat, that ballast tank has to be decontaminated before launch.
Going back to the certificate of decontamination, could it be tied with a bill of sale or required at a boat registration for the state?
Great question too. So for these boats, coming into the state, boats that are being purchased and coming into Montana, boat registration is done through Fish, Wildlife, and Parks. So I've had a lot of long conversations with our boating access folks. You are not required to register your boat in Montana for, I think you have a month grace period. So you can actively have a boat, purchase it, bring it into the state, launch it, and not register it for a month after coming here. And so I keep lobbying that, well, having a proof of inspection regardless would be great, even if there was that month lag time. But so far, with the Coast Guard regulations that we're also trying to navigate, we haven't found a good way to do that yet. If there was a law requiring an inspection for a boat coming in that's been out from out of state, that's been recently purchased, that could get us there, but we don't have that in the statute right now. There has to be a way, but currently we don't have the teeth to get it done.
So building off of that and a statement that you made earlier about not trying to immediately enforce the regulatory side, how is the relationship between the natural resource managers and law enforcement within the state?
So aquatic invasive species inspection regulations are in state statute, so any enforcement entity can enforce it. It's been a challenge because the enforcement folks have a lot of other things on their plate. Pulling over a boat isn't an exciting, sexy thing for enforcement folks. We have enforcement directly through our warden staff to Fish, Wildlife, and Parks, but that staff is pretty limited and spread pretty thin. I think they issued over 170 warnings and citations last year, primarily for failure to stop at inspection stations. But we also get support from our state police and county enforcement. It's kind of hit or miss. And that's one of the things that working with these local partners, in particular conservation districts and the tribes, that's really bolstered our enforcement support, because they're in these local communities. They can actually have a relationship with that local warden or local sheriff, and educate them one-on-one on what the law is, what they can do to help, and get them involved. And so we still have a long way to go, but we are getting support from across the board. It's just, we could always use more help.
Yes, we all are short on resources for sure. I have one more question in the chat. If you have any other questions, feel free to enter them in or raise your hand. Which avenue do you use to engage citizen scientists across the state, and what opportunities are there for them? Could you expand on that a little bit?
Yes. So some of my colleagues, like in Washington and Oregon, have some really established and well-organized citizen science type programs. Montana, we really don't have that yet. So for the most part, we've been rolling it out, working together with university extension, local partners through conservation districts, through the tribes, basically trying to find a group that's interested in the issue, engaging them, sitting down with them, talking about what we're doing, how you do it, how you report things, get out in the field with them, looking for invasive things, also identifying native things, just that expanded awareness of what's up in the water around you, and then engaging them from there and continue to following up into the future, with the intent of getting more eyes looking for things. I'm hopeful we can formalize our citizen science side of things a little bit better. We do have a reporting portal on our website where anybody in the public can report a suspected invasive species that we follow up on. We do have a number of partners using our data app. So we have an app specific for survey and sampling that some of our more formalized NGOs and partners are putting that data directly into, so we have it. but I guess engaging citizen science, we still have a long way to go on that as well. It's one of my favorite things to do, though. It's just identifying groups that are interested and then getting them out there in the mud looking for stuff is very satisfying.
I completely agree. Well, I don't see any other questions. So thanks so much, Tom, for joining us today. I really appreciate it. I think we can all take your lessons learned and apply them to our own states. And hopefully this information is helpful for those who are struggling with some of the similar issues that Tom has described in Montana. So big thanks again to Thomas Woolf for presenting today. And thanks everyone for joining us. As a reminder, we'll send out this recording by the beginning of next week at the latest, and it will be posted on the Invasive Mussel Collaborative website within the next few days as well. If you have any additional follow-up questions, feel free to email Tom. I do have his email right on the slide here, and he has graciously allowed us to bug him with questions after this. So thanks so much, Tom, and thanks again, everyone, for joining us today, and have a great afternoon, morning, wherever you are.